Looks like it's working. All right. Thanks for joining us. Here we are in the studio. Welcome back, everyone, to what is this show called? Live at 5. Yeah, that's right. What time is it again? 5 o'clock. We hope I should just read the little sign, handy sign back there. But it was a confusing day. I was texting back and forth with someone who's fixing my car. I had, and suddenly at the end of the day, the text came, "Oh, I'm sorry, we lost power. I just found a moment of hotspot to send you this text, and I'll try again tomorrow." And I'm like, "Do I get my car back? What's going on over here?" So I think that's it must be that one of those days. It sounds like I don't get my car back today, so I'll be walking home at the end of the show. I hope the weather stays nice. Thankfully, we're in Colorado and sunny, and it's a nice place. No complaints. There's something funny how I'm totally used to walking on Shabbos, and it's the same walk, and I walk it all the time. But during the week, it's like craziness. I would call a taxi rather than walk. Like I forget about it, just like it's a mitzvah to walk on Shabbos. It's a mitzvah not to walk when it's not Shabbos. Isn't that the way it goes? No, it's not true. You have to get some exercise, Rabbi. Okay, well, whoa, look at that. That's interesting. Speaking of... There we go. All right. Well, I don't know what happened there. As I was saying, we're having a weird day of internet problems. Thanks for joining us today at Live at 5. I want to make two short announcements before we get deeper into the show today. I'd like to wish first a mazel tov to a nice family from the community who has made Aliyah's move to Israel, Joe and Helen Horowitz Klayman. Dr. Helen Horowitz and Joe Klayman. And the Mazel Tov, though, is actually their daughter, Heidi, got engaged. So we are so excited to have 4 girls, and we just keep having this strange problem. This is what it really looks like. Can you see the background over here? This is me in the studio. Not quite sure why we're having a little trouble with the background here. It looks like I lost all my backgrounds. All right. So this is behind the scenes look at Live at 5 today. Here it's a little bit like the Wizard of Oz when they finally get up to the wizard and they discover that he's just a person behind the room. So I'm not quite sure why my Live at 5 my background is not working, but some sort of an internet problem. There you go. All right. Meanwhile, what I was saying was as follows: Heidi Klayman is a Kala, and it was a very nice mazel tov. We were very delighted. She's one of 2 twins who grew up here in Denver, went to school, went to Denver Academy of Torah, and then they went off to Israel together, went to seminary, and one of them just got engaged today. So that's a very exciting thing. I also want to extend my condolences, unfortunately, to a dear member of the community who lost her mother today. Also, Cheryl Mirup. I don't know if you know my friend Cheryl. Cheryl's mother, who lives in El Paso, Texas, was very sick for a while, and it was not incredibly surprising her passing, and it was thankfully very peaceful. But nevertheless, it's always a loss, and we extend our condolences. Really, one of my dear friends, Reb Alter Shmuel Shapiro, otherwise known affectionately as Eddie Shapiro, he who is one of the real key organizers of the Chevra Kadisha of the East Side here of Denver. What is the Chevra Kadisha? So word of the day. Even though we don't have the background, we can still have the word of the day. The word of the day of the Chevra Kadisha is means the holy guys, the holy crowd. And but more that's literal. But what does it mean more in context? More contextually, it means the group of people that is in charge of Jewish burial, the Jewish Burial Society. In many communities, you have a group of people that are knowledgeable and willing, ready, often volunteers or minimally compensated. It's not a very well-compensated role, but it's a very significant role in any Jewish community to make sure that people who pass are brought, treated properly, shown all the proper respectful preparations for burial, and then given a proper burial. So Eddie Shapiro, actually, not only was he a pivotal person. It continues to be for Jewish burial here in Denver, on the east side of Denver, but throughout the state and throughout the sort of the region. And many, he has lots of connections in all these minor Jewish communities all over the Rocky Mountain region, the Midwest. And he was able to help even in El Paso, Texas, that everything should be taken care of, that Cheryl Merripp's mother of blessed memory should be given a proper preparation for burial. So that's really amazing, and our condolences are out to her and to the broader family. Now, today I wanted, interestingly, to share with you some really cool figures in Jewish history who actually they're both, two of which I'm going to share with you today, this week in Jewish history, two prominent people whose yahrzeit, the anniversary of their passing, is actually Shabbos. And that's really, I just happen to notice not one, but both of them. And I actually want to share with you. So I'm taking out my, this is, bad form. I have to take out my phone so I can read it to you. And, if you were in the room, I would probably wouldn't do it. But if we're on the show, it's okay for me to read from my phone, right? This is tech anyway. Now, again, I want to, just before I read these phenomenally interesting biographies of these great scholars and leaders, as we approach their yahrzeit, which is Shabbos, I want to thank the historian whose name is Manny Saltiel, who lives in LA, who is responsible for compiling every week. He sends out this beautifully robust list of famous, great rabbinic and historical Jewish leaders, and on the date of their passing, and he lists them. And every single day, there's a long list of people. And I don't read you the whole list, but I pick out some of the highlights. I call them highlights that I want to mention to you. There are two men whose yahrzeit is the 26th of Iyar, which is Shabbos. Number one, Rav Saadia Gaon. Rav Saadia Gaon, and that's maybe a very famous name. He is a pretty famous name for an old person. I say old because he lived in the 9th century of the Common Era. It was, as we count years, 882 to 942. Okay, so that's way back there. Okay, it's over 1,000 years ago he lived, and he lived in a place. He was born in Egypt, about 100 kilometers southwest of Cairo, and he led, according to the biography here that I'm reading, an all-out war against the Karaites when he was just 23. Criticizing their heretical theories with articulately advanced arguments. Now, who are the Karaites, you might ask, parenthetically? It was a small splinter group which has existed and I think, frankly, continues to exist. A very, very small splinter group of Jews, and they are outside the pale of normative the religious thought, and they... and so this is an ongoing sort of epistemological battle that has been fought in many generations. And when he was 23, he was a vocal critic of that splinter movement of Jewish people. Now, in the year 915, not 1915, 915, he moved from Egypt to Tiberia. Tiberia is, is Tiberias, as we call it, in Israel. And he was in Israel there at the time. So it was a community, and he was there in a Jewish educational capacity. He was in a yeshiva. In the year 915, there was a yeshiva in Tiberias. However, it says here that he was called up by a yeshiva in Babylonia, in the town of Sura. Okay, so now in that particular era, which I'll describe in a minute, there were some great prominent yeshivas in Babylon, which as it was then known, Bavel. It would be modern day Iran. Okay, between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers over there, and major yeshivas. One of the towns that had a yeshiva of Jews was in Sura, and another one, it was in a place called Pumbedisa, and Sura and Pumbedisa. So he became the Rosh Yeshiva of Sura in Babylon in in the year 928. Okay. Now, he had a little bit of an unfortunate breakdown, a rift with based on a particular decision of his, and he moved to Baghdad. Okay, the city of Baghdad in the capital, right, of Iraq. He returned 7 years later and patched everything up. He wrote many famous things. One of the most famous things he wrote was a book called Ha'amunus Vadeus, which means like faith and knowledge. It was the first Jewish philosophy book of its kind, because we have lots of works of Jewish scholarship that we wouldn't call philosophy. His was the first that you would call philosophy. It was written in Aramaic, and it was translated out of Aramaic into Hebrew by Rav Yehuda ibn Tibbon. And he also, Rav Saadia Gaon, he had an Arabic translation of the Chumash, of the Torah, which is still the sort of essential Arabic translation of the Torah studied by Yemenite Jews till this very day. Now, isn't that amazing? An amazing thing. We have so much biographical detail of the life of a Jewish leader, a famed Jewish leader of over 1,000 years ago, and he lived in Babylonia. Now, I want to tell you that his name was Saadia, and it is a name that you'll see in Sephardic communities sometimes, that they still give that name. I've met Jews named Saadia from that part of the world, but although he didn't have a last name, we call him Rav Saadia Gaon. And the word Gaon after his name is really not a last name, it's a title. There were lots of great scholars and Jewish leaders in that period of Jewish history that were called Gaonim. Now, the word Gaon literally means genius, as in you may have heard of the Vilna Gaon, the Gaon of Vilna. The word Gaon just means genius. It means like a superstar scholar. But there was a whole period of scholarship called the Gaonim. There was in sort of the chronology of Jewish scholarship. You have the sages of the Mishnah in the first couple of centuries of the Common Era, and after them, the sages of the Talmud in the next couple of centuries. And then after that, you have the period of the Gaonim. And after that, you have the period of the Rishonim. Now, the Rishonim are much better known to us. Scholars like Maimonides and Nachmanides and Rashi. We know those scholars much better. But there was several centuries of scholarship in between. And Rav Saadia Gaon is probably one of the best known of them. There's also Rav Achai Gaon, Rav Hai Gaon. There's a whole bunch of them. Each one of them is given the title Gaon after their name. So his yard site is Shabbos. And that's the first one of the two that I wanted to read to you. I just find reading these little biographical sketches of people throughout Jewish history to be the coolest thing. It's really connects you back, and it sort of reminds us of the incredible, breadth of Jewish history. And, I just find it so cool. I'm going to read you one more. So also on the same day is the yard site of Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, otherwise known as the Ramchal. Now, the Ramchal, that may be a little more familiar. It's his life. He lived a little more recently. He lived in the 18th century. He was born in 1707 of the Common Era and lived till he was 40 and died in 1747. He died very young, 40 years. But in those young 40 years, he accomplished an incredible amount. The Ramchal, as he is known, he's given that name as an acronym, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, Ramchal. But he hasn't actually, Luzzatto is I believe his last name. Now, the famous things that he wrote include the Mesilas Yesharim, which is one of the most significant books of Musar, and we usually translate that as the Path of the Just. I happen to be studying that. That was my, if you were watching the show earlier in the week, that was my Kabbalah after, my little commitment after the tragic events of last week was to study a little bit of the Mesilas Yesharim every day. And here is the Ramchal, the author of that, whose yard site is Shabbos. That's one thing he wrote. He also wrote the Derech Hashem, another amazingly pivotal work of Jewish philosophy. In English, we call that the Way of God, amongst many other things. He wrote something called the Pischei Chachma, and I never heard of that. Listen to this. The Pischei Chachma, which literally means the gate of wisdom, is 138 chapters on the entire scope of Kabbalah in what many authorities consider to be the most systematic manner ever achieved. Amazing, huh? He was 40. He died when he was 40. And he also wrote the Das Tvunos, is another extremely well-regarded, famous Jewish work called the Das Tvunos, which means the knowing. It's also usually translated as the knowing heart. Now, here's a little bit more biographical information about him. He was born in Italy in a town called Padua. And he was a student of Rav Yitzchak Lampronti, the author of the Pachad Yitzchak, the first major Talmudic encyclopedia ever assembled. Okay, that was his teacher. The Ramchal, he had a novel approach in some ways, and in his lifetime, he had opponents. He didn't only have proponents; he had critics, strong critics throughout the Jewish world in his time. And partially as a result of this opposition, he left his native Italy in 1735. He settled in Amsterdam. Instead in Amsterdam. In 1743, he traveled to Israel and he went to the town of Akko, which is very far to the north. Akko, I've never seen even north of Haifa. He unfortunately, tragically died in a plague at a young age of 4 years later, together with his wife and son. Now, the Vilna Gaon, we mentioned him a minute ago. The Vilna Gaon lived in the late 18th century in Poland, in the town of Vilna, and he was known as the genius of Vilna. And he was widely regarded, the Vilna Gaon, as the greatest scholar of 1,000 years. But listen to this. He said that the Ramchal had the most profound understanding of Judaism that any mortal human could attain. And he said, and this is very famous, that had the Ramchal been alive at the same time as he would have walked from Vilna to Italy on foot to sit at his feet and learn from him. So when the Vilna Gaon says that about you, that's good. That's like, that's your, those are good credentials. Okay. It's about as good as it could get. And it happens to be, in fact, that we have a tradition that when the Vilna Gaon, he would have gone to Eretz Israel to see the Ramchal, and he found out the Ramchal had died, and he returned to Vilna. And there's a very famous fact that the Vilna Gaon wanted to go to Israel, didn't end up making it. According to this tradition recorded here, the reason he wanted to go to Israel in part was to visit to sit at the feet of the Ramchal. He turned around and went back. Amazing thing. Now, there's another very fascinating thing said about the Ramchal. It is said that he was this may sound a little mystical, that he was a reincarnation of the soul of Rabbi Akiva. Why would one say that potentially? So it's interesting. Rabbi Akiva was a great scholar that lived 1,000 years before him, even more actually, come to think of it. I mean, he probably lived 1,600 years before him, 1,700 years before him, Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva only started becoming the great scholar that he became at age 40. So there's an idea that these 40 years of the Ramchal are said to be the first 40 years of Rabbi Akiva's greatness. And you should know that if you go to Israel, Rabbi Akiva and the Ramchal are buried right next to each other. So that's a little bit of he's a fabulous. These are two incredible names of great scholars, great voices of Judaism. They're contributed so very much, and their yard sites are both on Shabbos. And I hope that was as interesting for you as it was for me. I happened to really get a lot out of those little vignettes, an insight and a window into great times of Jews in the past. So had my Zoom been working properly, I would have had my little Today in Jewish History screen up behind me, but instead you had to just look at the green screen behind me. The other thing I wanted to do for a little bit today as well, before we have a good part of the show left to go today, is wanted to talk a little bit about some of the upcoming excitement. We have Shavuos is yet to come. Now, we haven't started talking about it in earnest, although we've been counting up to it every day of the Omer. Today is day 39. So we know that we're going to count 49 days, and then we're going to celebrate Shavuos. So we have 10 days left to count. Now, those 10 days will conclude on Sunday night, May 15th at sundown. At that point, the 49th day will be over and Shavuos will commence. Now, Shavuos is a holiday we're going to talk some more about next week, and it is one of the biggies, but it's a shorty. Okay, it's a biggie but a shorty. So as opposed to Passover and Sukkot, which are a whole week, Shavuos is really just a day. Okay, in Israel and in the diaspora, when we have a do-over day, we repeat all our holidays and we do them twice, so it'll be 2 days, but it's just a 1-day holiday made into two, 48 hours, and we'll celebrate it as of sundown on Sunday, May 15th, for the subsequent 2 days, 48 hours, and it will conclude on Tuesday at sundown. So this is what I see referred to by my colleagues all over the world as sort of the best kept secret of Jewish holidays. Best kept secret in the sense of it's the least sort of the most secretive, the least known, and the least celebrated. I have my own little theory about that. I may have shared it with you, which is that it's the only one of the Jewish holidays that doesn't happen during Sunday school season. Because all the Sunday schools let out before the holiday is celebrated, and they recommence before Rosh Hashanah and all the other holidays. So this is the one holiday that gets celebrated during summer vacation from Sunday school, and therefore nobody really learned about it. The holiday, and also some say that it could be it gets so little press and celebration because it doesn't have a lot of obligations to, ways to commemorate and to celebrate it. You don't have to clean out all the leavened bread from your kitchen. You don't have to make a small add-on room to the house in the backyard and go move out there for a week. There's just, you don't have to fast the entire day or hear, someone blow trumpet sounds out of a ram's horn. It really, there's not a lot that's going on during the holiday of Shavuos that would sort of stick, if you will. The only things that we have are customs. It's a Yom Tov, sort of pure Yom Tov. It's a pure Yom Tov means a holiday that the Torah commands us to celebrate, and it's pure if you think about it in that way. It's kind of clean of any other additional, ceremonial observances and ritual celebrations. We don't have much. We have some great customs. Like eating cheesecake. We have, blintzes and other dairy foods. There's an interesting association with dairy foods in Shavuos, so we'll eat some dairy foods together, God willing. And there's also a beautiful custom to stay up all night and to study the Torah until the wee hours. So that is another great custom. None of these are mentioned in the Torah. They're not obligatory, but they're beautiful customs that are practiced all over the world to this very day. The custom of staying up all night is a very dear one to me personally, because it comes, some say, from the Medrash that says that the day that the Jewish people stood at Mount Sinai and were to receive the Torah, which is the one of the main events that Shavuos as a holiday commemorates. On that day, God came to give the Torah, and the Jewish people overslept and they were late. And they can you imagine being late for the most significant moment of Judaism? And so as a compensation throughout all the years and years and years, so as not to be late, we stay up all night instead, awake. We don't even go to sleep at all. And we study. We do the earliest possible morning services at dawn, and we show that we are not fishleptzach, which is a Yiddish for all sleepy and schluffy. We are rather excited and passionate to receive the gift of the Torah. So that resonates with me because I struggle with promptness, shall we say. So it's a beautiful custom, and people like to stay up all night. It's not an easy thing to do, but in this time of year, the nights are very short. And if you dive in a late evening service first, have a nice meal, and then you finally hit the books at about midnight. And by the time you're ready to start, getting started with the morning service for dawn, for sunrise, you really only had about 4 hours. So, 4 hours it's about a coffee and a half, or maybe 2.5, depending. And, since it's a dairy holiday anyway, you could even put cream in it. So it's a very beloved custom. People stay up studying, and you'll see that all over the world. There's a Kabbalistic curriculum, shall we say, if you're interested in that, for what you should study at night. And you're welcome to study anything. But the Kabbalistic curriculum is called Tikkun Leil Shavuos. It is that means sort of the how do we translate this? Leil Shavuos means the night of Shavuos. Tikkun, you may have heard of the word tikkun olam, like perfecting the universe. So this is a way to do something that has like a mystical, spiritual benefit for the universe if you study exactly these things. And it has to do, it's actually it's a long roster of excerpts of like everything Talmudic. Everything's scriptural and Talmudic. It's a tiny excerpt. So you read a little piece of every parsha and read a little piece of every book of Tanakh, and then a little piece of the Mishnahs, and a little piece of all the tractates of the Talmud, and a little piece of the Kabbalistic things, and on and on. It's like it's almost like a complete soup to nuts overview of Talmud, of Torah scholarship. And you do a little sample and all the above, and it would take a person many hours to do it. And that's one custom. There are others who have a custom to stay up all night studying the entire book of Psalms. Say all 150 chapters of Psalms, which shouldn't take you the whole night, but could do if you say them nice and slowly. And then there are those who just simply study anything, whatever speaks to you. And some people just sort of hang outside in the lobby and hit the cheesecake. But all of those are lovely customs. And then there's the sunrise service option at the end of all that. And many synagogues here in our community will be hosting that, and you can do it as well. So take a look out for that Sunday night. It's the first night. Last year, if I'm not mistaken, at my son, who was at the time in 11th grade in yeshiva in Ner Yisrael in Baltimore, he did stay up all night studying. Of course, he sleep during the day afterwards, but he did it not just the first night, but the second night also. There's a small group of people that did a repeat, since it becomes in the diaspora a 2-day holiday. So they stay up all night, both nights studying. So that was I was pretty impressed with that. That was that the second night is actually 3.5 coffees, if I'm not mistaken. But to get that done is a really impressive thing. And all of these are really just about showing our really more than anything, showing our love for the Torah. The celebration of Shavuos is, as we're going to talk about this more next week, is a commemoration of the day in which the Jewish people were given the Torah as a gift by God at Mount Sinai, and it's a big deal, and we're delighted about it. And the way we show our pleasure at the gift is to enjoy it, study it, pick it up and care for it. If someone gives you, a nice book to read and you say, oh, thank you so much, I'm going to put that right here on my shelf with all the others that I never look at. That doesn't really show that you like the gift. But if you say, wow, that's amazing, I'm going to start reading it right now, and I'm not going to breathe until I finish. Now that really is a way to enjoy a gift. And we want to make sure that we show our appreciation for the gift, since it really is the defining essential reality of what it means to be the Jewish people. Is without this Torah, we wouldn't exist, and the world wouldn't be the world that it is today. So it's our great gift, and we're going to celebrate it. And that's coming up just 10 days. Just 10 days from tonight at sunset, everybody. Mark your calendars and get ready. Get a nap. Brew some coffee and get some cheesecake. And here we go. Thanks for joining me behind the scenes today with a little glimpse of the green here in the green room before the show, as it were. Have a healthy and a holy and a wonderful Shabbos, and we will see you again for Live at 5, God willing, on Monday.